The New York Giants and Philadelphia Eagles have a big, important date on Saturday night. In today's edition of Crossover Thursday, Louie DiBiase, Gino Cammilleri, and yours truly take a look at that game. We look at matchups, we look at key storylines, we look at keys to the game, and so much more. That's coming your way next on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a special crossover edition of the Locked On Eagles and the Locked On Giants podcast. We thank you for making Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code Locked On. I'm Louie DiBiase, host of Locked On Eagles, alongside my co-host Gino Cammilleri, and we're joined by Locked On Giants host Patricia Traina. Patricia, thanks for joining us today. Exciting. We've never done a show, us three together, but with the playoffs being such an important game here on Saturday at Lincoln Financial Field, I thought we had to bring the whole crew together.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one. I'm excited. I love doing shows with you guys, and this is a treat for me.
For sure. And, this is a huge game. I didn't think we'd be doing a third crossover with you, but the Eagles and Giants play in their first playoff game against each other since 2008, kickoff Saturday night at Lincoln Financial Field at 8:15. And you look at this, Patricia, it's a super interesting matchup between two very different teams, although they're in the same division. The Eagles are kind of the team that have the Super Bowl pressure, the expectations with a loaded roster, and the New York Giants are the young team maybe we didn't expect to be this far into the postseason, kind of playing with house money.
Yeah, we didn't expect them to be in the postseason, let alone this far along in the postseason. But the Giants over the last several weeks have been playing some of their better ball. The record might not show it, but if you break it down, the stats and the game film, you actually can see that they have gotten better and better. And how they're doing this with, a receiving core that, that probably they didn't expect to end the season with, let alone, play through the whole season with the injuries that they've had. I mean, that's just a credit to the job that the coaching staff has done, and a credit to the players, of course, who believe in themselves, believe in the program, the process, and who are just, they're starting to think that they can become dangerous given the success they've had. Still a lot of work to do, don't get me wrong, but that confidence is really, really rising.
Absolutely. Gino, and I feel like a team like that's kind of playing with house money that nobody expected to be here. That's not the Eagles. It feels like it's Super Bowl or bust. It feels like that's a dangerous team to have in the second round come to town.
Patricia, we made this point the other day on our show that this Giants team feels very similar to the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles, that they might have been maybe a year ahead of schedule, a younger team that had some of those foundational pieces. Is that the sentiment that you are gaining in New York? Is, like you had said, that they're quote unquote playing with house money, but playing with house money, you still expect to win. Is that the goal come Saturday, that this team believes they're going to go into Philadelphia and put up a real fight?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, every week, whether it's week 1, week 10, week 14, wild card division, they expect to win. They expect to go out there and play their best football. And, the Giants, it's interesting. They don't look at this as playing with house money. They look at it as we belong. We put in the work. We did followed the processes. We belong here. And it's up to us to remain in this tournament and just see it through. Now, will that happen? Obviously, one game at a time. Nobody's taking the Eagles lightly. The Giants haven't won in Philadelphia since 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
But, there's a lot of confidence. And here's an interesting stat for you guys. Giants are 6-0 against number one seeded teams since 1990 in the playoffs.
That's true. Yeah, that's interesting. Even both Super Bowl teams they had were lower seeds that were kind of shocking the world on the road. So they're going to have to shock the world again, though, Patricia, because the Eagles are the number one seed for a reason. They ran the NFC for all of 2022. And, you know, it wasn't a smooth final 3 games of the season. Without Jalen Hurts, they lost to both the Dallas Cowboys and the New Orleans Saints, and they barely beat your Giants with Davis Webb and a bunch of backups. The good news is, though, they're coming into this game a lot healthier than they were to end the regular season. Jalen Hurts didn't even show up on the injury report. That's big considering that shoulder injury. Josh Sweat looks like he's ready to go. Right tackle Lane Johnson, a limited participant. The only player they're really not sure about if he's going to be in the starting lineup is slot cornerback Avonte Maddox. What do the Giants look like from a health perspective heading into Saturday?
Well, they had a handful of guys who were listed as limited. Now, the Giants had a walkthrough on Tuesday. They're going to have a walkthrough on Wednesday. And I believe, I think they're going to have a full practice on Thursday. I think that's the plan. But they had a handful of guys who were limited. Not on the injury report was Leonard Williams, which is good news for the Giants. He's been dealing with that neck injury. Landon Collins was on the injury report. Azeez Ojulari with that ankle, they need him. So, you know, overall, I think they're in good shape. The fact that these guys are limited and, you know, right now, I don't think anybody on that injury report wants to miss such a big game, but we'll of course have to see how it goes through, how they go through the rest of the week. But overall, the Giants, you know, this is the healthiest they've been in quite some time. They were healthy last week. They didn't have anybody get a injury designation. I can't remember the last time that has happened. Giants always like amongst the top 5 injured teams in the NFL. First time last week, they didn't have anybody with an injury designation. We'll have to see what this week brings. We'll find out on Thursday, obviously. But yeah, there's optimism that they're going to have all hands on deck for this game.
Gino, it feels like, and you can attest to this, you mentioned it on the podcast a few times this week, but it's crazy to see where the NFC East is right now, considering they were seen as the NFC least for years. These teams were battling. The division races at the end were always close, but each team felt like they were just trying to get to 9-10 wins and get that 4 seed or the 3. But here are the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the New York Giants, 3 of the final 4 teams remaining in the NFC playoffs. That's never happened since 2002 when the 4-team division format came to be, where 3 teams in the same division are in that final 4. It felt like just a few years ago, the Giants were a 5-win team that was mad at this Eagles team for tanking a game at the end because they couldn't win the division.
This is, to my knowledge, and I'm sure Patricia can attest to this as well, arguably the best NFC East that we have ever seen. And the numbers are there to back it up. Like Lou just said, never once in either conference have 3 teams from the same division made it this far. Patricia, I want you to back us up here. Is this the best NFC East that you have seen in your time covering this division?
Since they've gone to the 4-team format, yes. If I'm not mistaken, I think every team finished with above 500.
Yep. Right, because even Washington was in it until the very end.
Yeah. I mean, when was the last time? I mean, at one point we thought that all 4 teams were going to be in the playoffs. I mean, that speaks volumes to the quality and how the NFC East has turned things around. And yeah, I can remember, referring to the NFC East as the NFC least. Yeah. And how it was, it was almost like a struggle. Who was going to have the quote unquote best record under 500 to win the division. So this division it reminds me of the 1980s. In the 1980s, they had the 5-team format and there was some really, really good football. So the rivalries, Giants, Washington, Giants, Eagles, right. Dallas, Philly, the rivals that we know today. And then you had the Cardinals who were in the division at the time. And that was a pretty good division back then. That's what it reminds me of now. Of course, one less team, Cardinals no longer in the division with the Giants, Cowboys, and Commanders.
Well, that's a good point, Patricia, because you look at through the last decade and a half, I mean, the New York Giants have 2 Super Bowls against Tom Brady. The Philadelphia Eagles have a Super Bowl against Tom Brady. It's not like the NFC East has done nothing in the 21st century, but you're right. It looks like for the first time in a long time since the 80s and 90s, all 4 and at the time 5 teams are competing at the same time. I mean, Washington was winning championships back then, Dallas, New York, Philadelphia was the only team that didn't, but you look at the 90s defenses they had with Reggie White and, all those guys, Jerome Brown, Clyde Simmons, Randall Cunningham on the other side, that finally from top to bottom, this division looks like one of, if not the best in football. So it's going to be featured heavily in the NFC playoffs this weekend. Eagles, Giants on Saturday night at 8:15. Coming up next, Patricia, Gino, and I, we're going to dive into some key matchups to watch in this game on both sides of the ball. That's coming up on a special crossover edition of Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants.
If you've been listening to the show the past 6 weeks, you have heard 3 crossovers between the Eagles and Giants, and we have put in a ton of player props over at BetOnline.net, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Eagles, Locked On Giants, and the entire Locked On Podcast Network. If you want to get in on the action, go to betonline.net today on your mobile phone or anywhere where you can get internet. It is seamless. You put in the money. After you win the money and bet responsibly, you could get that money out quickly. They give you all the information, all the data to back up your responsible bets. Lou and I will be cashing in once again on LOE3 this weekend. Listen to Friday's episode to get our 6 player props. And as always, make sure you go to betonline.net. Put your wagers in responsibly because betonline.net is where the game starts.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants your first listen each and every day. Make sure you also subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday, and Monday local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. On today's edition of Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants, Patricia Traina, Gino Cammilleri, and myself, Lou DiBiase, we're getting you ready for Eagles Giants Saturday night at 8:15. The first time these two teams have played in the playoffs since 2008. In the divisional round, the first time the Eagles are hosting the Giants in the playoffs since 2006, when Jeff Garcia upset the Giants in that wild card matchup. So, guys, we're going to get into now some key matchups, and I think there are some big ones on both sides of the ball. And Patricia, I want to start with you. Is there a key matchup you're thinking this could really dictate whether or not the Giants pull off an upset on the road in a very hostile environment?
Yeah, there are a couple, actually. I'll give you one on each side of the ball. And I'm going to start off with Hassan Reddick versus Evan Neal. That's number one. Evan Neal, of course, the rookie. I posted an article earlier today on Giants Country. Evan Neal has given up 10 pressures. Now he hasn't lined up exclusively across from Hassan Reddick, but mostly. Right. 10 of his pressures have come against the Eagles and 8 in that one game that week, that I think it was week 14, that first game. Just, that was the season high for the young man. And, Evan Neal's going to be a very, very good offensive tackle. Hasn't quite looked the same since he came back from that knee injury. If you watch him on tape, you can kind of see he's bending at the waist a little bit more than he should be. I'm a little concerned about that matchup. I'm wondering if the Giants maybe give him some help, because Hassan Reddick is just, he's fired up and he's just been an absolute terror against the Giants this year. On the other side of the ball, I'm going to say the tight end, Dallas Goedert, going against the Giants linebackers. Yeah. The Giants linebackers, I keep saying after every game, it seems like, I keep saying, dear Lord, please bring this team some linebackers who can cover. And, granted, the Giants had some injuries, but you go back and you look at the last several weeks, Hockenson twice in the regular season game and last week just absolutely destroyed them, whether that be, because they gave up the points, or the yards to him or whatnot. They've had some other problems. Dallas Goedert is a very, very good tight end, not a guy that I think even if you bump him, at the line of scrimmage, he could still recover. So yeah. I'm concerned about that matchup. And I see that as being one of the big ones as well, because they get him free. What are they going to do with the receivers? AJ Brown, what are they going to do with Smith? I mean, I'm concerned. The Eagles are loaded with weapons, but that tight end in particular has just been a thorn in the team's side, as has Boston Scott, by the way, but we won't talk about that because then
the giant killer himself. I know Boston Scott's got to love this matchup in the playoffs. That's definitely one to keep an eye out for. Gino, I'm looking at the other side of the offensive line too for the Giants and looking at Andrew Thomas, who's coming off a great game against Minnesota, PFF's highest graded pass blocker in the wild card round of the postseason, 44 pass blocking snaps, 0 pressures allowed. We know the Eagles likely going to get Josh Sweat back for this game. And I think, Patricia, you mentioned too, the other side of this offensive line versus the Eagles pass rush. It's going to really dictate this matchup. If you can keep Daniel Jones inside the pocket, don't let him use his legs and get to him as often as you did in the Meadowlands where you sacked him 7 times, that's going to get a young quarterback off his game, especially, like I said, in such a tough road environment, which would get the crowd going. I think the pass rush for the Eagles is going to be key, man.
I have to agree. And Patricia, the thing to go with the pass rush is the ability to hit somebody in those intermediate to deep areas when coverage does open up and the pass rush doesn't hit home. I want to know, out of those 3 receivers, you look at Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, Richie James, which one of those 3 do you think has the best opportunity to break this open and give the Giants a chance if they do have to pass? If Saquon Barkley goes off, we know he could take over the game. But if this becomes a shootout, who's going to be that guy that lights up the box score for the Giants?
I'm going to go with Hodgins. He has been a really, really nice surprise for this team. I think he scored a touchdown in every game except for one in the last 5 or 6. And he's so underrated. I'm kind of surprised that he still gets single coverage and he doesn't get bumped at the line of scrimmage. It's just a matter of time, I think, before he starts getting, manhandled a little bit there. Darius Slayton's another guy who I think, is going to want to prove himself. He had that big drop last week against Minnesota that, thank goodness the team came through. Otherwise he would have been wearing the goat horns, for the offseason. But he's a guy who can potentially break open, down the field. But the thing I look for from the Giants is maybe, a lot of crosser routes. They did a lot of crosser routes and intermediate stuff with Richie James, who's very, shifty and elusive. It's interesting. These Giants receivers, you watch them, they don't get, wide open. They just get open just enough. And Daniel Jones, aka Danny Dollars, I call him Danny Dollars as opposed to Danny Dimes because he's going to get paid. He's been
that's a good one.
Yeah, I trademarked that, by the way. So anyway,
that's good.
He has been on the money with his passes. I mean, you go back and you look at his accuracy; it has been laser precise. And I'm just, what a turnaround for Daniel Jones. I mean. Right. No stupid decisions where you sit there and go, Danny, what are you doing, man? And he's just been so good with getting the ball and putting the ball right where only his receivers can get it. So I think, that's been a big help for the Giants, why they've been able to make this work with a receiver core that, I don't think would have been on very many people's fantasy teams at the start of the year.
And that's definitely the opposite when it comes to the Eagles receiving core of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Both had huge games against the Giants the last time they played their starters, Week 14. Both had a touchdown. Really incredible performance from both. But, Patricia, you look at the performance from the Giants secondary against maybe the best receiver in football, or at least a top-tier player in Justin Jefferson for the Minnesota Vikings. 7 catches last week, but only for 47 yards. Dory Jackson, Xavier McKinney at safety. I mean, that secondary just did a number on one of the greatest receivers. So that's going to be a huge matchup, too, with Jalen Hurts' shoulder looking healthier. Still imagine they're going to want to keep him in the pocket at times and have him throw more, protect himself from taking a lot of hits. So I feel like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are going to be key, but this secondary is coming off a huge performance.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Justin Jefferson had a reception in the 4th quarter of the game.
Right, he was erased in that second half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Giants, of course, they got back Dory Jackson and Xavier McKinney, who they didn't have in the first game against the Vikings.
Right.
They also didn't have those two for the 2 games against the Eagles. So they have made a big, big difference. And I'm not quite sure how defensive coordinator Wink Martindale is going to deploy them with regards to the Eagle receivers. But
because the issue is the Eagles have 2 Justin Jeffersons, it feels like.
Yeah, but you know what? There are things they could, whether they bracket one and single cover the other, or I'm not sure exactly what the plan is. I can guess, but I'm probably going to be wrong. But they're going to, they're going to try and get to Jalen Hurts. It's interesting. Last week, Wink Martindale did not blitz Kirk Cousins a lot. I think it was like around 20-something%, which is down from the average. I think he blitzes somewhere around 50-ish or so. Will he blitz against the Eagles a little bit more? I could see that being a possibility, but of course, you got to play good contain. You can't let Jalen Hurts escape, and use his legs. So I'm going to be curious to see how they play it. But you're right. That defensive secondary has looked like a whole new unit, the way it should have been looking. Interestingly, Jackson and Fabian Moreau, the other starting cornerback, were on the injury report this week with various. Jackson has a back issue. Moreau, I think, was an ankle. So we'll have to see that. But I think they're both going to play, and we'll see how that affects the coverage plans.
They're going to have their hands full against the best duo maybe in the NFL. Definitely a top tier with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Patricia. You mentioned Dallas Goedert earlier, tight end. That's a huge addition they didn't have in that first game. Gino, is there any other matchups you're thinking about here that's going to be key in this game?
I have to look across the ball, and I have to look at that injured Lane Johnson and what Kayvon Thibodeaux is going to do. Snap in and snap out. Because Lane Johnson, I don't know how he is going to play through a torn adductor when he is going against somebody as athletic, as physical, as Kayvon Thibodeaux. Patricia, if you had to put Kayvon's play at a level of 1 to 10 on how he has performed all season in that game last week, what would you have rated on that scale of 1 to 10 for Kayvon?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting, Gino, because a lot of people look at Kayvon Thibodeaux and they say he doesn't have the sack numbers. Yeah, well, look at how many times he has been disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
And
as a team that has Brandon Graham, we're not, immune to that.
You have to just move the pocket. That's the goal.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So to your question, Gino, I would say he's definitely, like 8. I would put him in the 8 because he has gone from, remember he had a slow start from that knee injury that he had in the preseason, and it took him a while to get his feet underneath him. But this is a kid who loves to play football. He takes pride in being a savage out there, and he's gotten more and more confident. He's been working on counter moves. He's been working on ways to shed blocks, and oh my goodness, when he come next year, he's really going to be something special. But he's really turned it up these last few weeks, and doesn't have the sack numbers, but he does disrupt things in the backfield.
Lane Johnson was a limited participant this week for the Eagles, and this is a player that hasn't allowed a sack in 2 years now, though. So even if he's 80% of who he was in 2022, I'm still feeling a lot better about the Eagles' chances on that right side compared to when they had Jack Driscoll right tackle over the final 3 weeks of the season. It was definitely getting shaky, so the Eagles getting Lane Johnson back is going to be huge. And I think, too, you look at that interior of the defensive line for the Giants. Dexter Lawrence was incredible against the Minnesota Vikings, but it's strength against strength because the Eagles have 2 all-pros / Pro Bowlers in the middle and center Jason Kelce, and left guard Landon Dickerson. Isaac Seumalo at right guard's been one of the most underrated players, I think, in the NFL this year. So it's going to be a fun chess match on the inside as well. Guys, coming up next right here on Crossover Thursday, Locked On Eagles, Locked On Giants. Prediction time for Eagles-Giants. The divisional round of the playoffs continues this Saturday at 8:15. And guys, today's episode of Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants is presented by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know a lot of our goals is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, then man, we've got just the thing for you. You got to try Built Bars. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't even know they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is they're healthy, 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein in every bar. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puff, you name it. You're so close to Sam's Club. Run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later, and we thank Built Bar for sponsoring the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants podcast today. All right, we're wrapping up this special crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles, Locked On Giants. Louie DiBiase, Gino Cammilleri, and Patricia Traina kickoff Saturday night at 8:15 at Lincoln Financial Field. It's going to be, Patricia, it's exciting. The playoffs, especially with a game that you win, you get to the NFC title. That's always going to bring a level of excitement to these diehard fan bases, especially in the NFC East. But when you put two rivals in this storied division together, I think it makes it even more intense. I know you're mulling whether you're going to go down to Philly for the game. If you do, it's going to be, I'm sure you're going to enjoy the atmosphere.
Oh, absolutely. I've been to Philly before for Philly
Right.
Giants. And I anticipate I will be there this weekend. I'm just waiting for confirmation on credentialing, but it's always something special. It's an experience like none other. And I've been to several stadiums over the course of my career, and Philly is just something special. And it's going to be rocking at the Link.
And I told Gino on the show on Tuesday that, for as storied as this rivalry is, it feels like the Eagles over the last decade and a half have mostly had their intense division games against the Cowboys and Washington. It feels like the Eagles and Giants kind of almost taken turns being good and haven't really been contenders at the same time. So this kind of lines up where both are finally there and knocking on the door for a chance to get to the NFC title game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be fun this weekend. You're going to have Dallas and Frisco fighting it out, Giants and Eagles fighting it out. I mean, gosh, what better time of year? And just to have, like you said, the best division in football represented, so heavily represented. Now, obviously one of the three teams is going to probably be gone. Well, not probably, will be gone after this weekend coming up, but what a run it's been.
There's a chance that it could be an NFC East, NFC conference championship between the Giants and Cowboys or Eagles Cowboys. That'd be pretty insane for sure. All right, guys, let's get to predictions before we wrap up the show. Gino, we'll start with you. Eagles Giants Saturday night, my man. How you feeling about this matchup?
You throw everything out that you had learned before. This game is a one-game season. Both of these coaches, well-respected coaches, young coaches, both Western New Yorkers. You got two Western New Yorkers here on the show. This is the battle of the best division in football in the last 20 years, maybe ever. Whoever comes out on top of this game, I believe, should get to the Super Bowl. I think has a very good chance to do so. I think if the Giants maintain this momentum, they're going to be a hard team to beat. Brian Daboll is somebody who I talked about 2 days ago on the show, that he has Daniel Jones clicking just like he did with Josh Allen. But there's a wall on the other side, and the Eagles, they haven't moved all year, and that kid, Jalen Hurts, is the one conducting this train. I think it's going to be a hard-fought game that comes down to the fourth quarter. We're all going to be sweating this game out. It's not going to be easy. The line is 7.5. I think the Giants cover that for sure. Throw that out the window. 27-24 Eagles. Jake Elliott wins out on a last-second field goal.
Wow. Okay. Patricia, do you feel like it's going to be that close?
I actually do. I do think the Giants are going to cover the spread. Now, what's interesting about the Giants is for most of the season, they were averaging somewhere around the low 20s per game. The last several games that I mentioned, where they really took off and started playing their best football, they've been averaging 25.1 points per game. I think that's going to continue because they're hot right now at the right time. I do think this is going to be a one-score game. I have the Eagles, though, winning 33-27 because something always goes funky for the Giants when they play at Lincoln Financial Field. Yeah. And it's interesting in a video I did for my channel, I said miracles do happen outside of the Meadowlands, but let's be realistic. The Eagles are loaded. They are a loaded team, and there are some matchups that just make me a little, uneasy.
Yeah.
So as much as I hate to pick the Eagles, I got to go in my head here and give them the nod.
I will also say most of the time when a miracle happens between these two teams, it normally happens for the Eagles. So that's another thing.
So the Giants, you owe the Giants one.
Right. So I'm feeling more confident. I still agree it's going to probably be a 1-score game. I don't think this is going to be like, the Eagles. Gino talked about earlier how the 2021 Eagles reminds him a lot of the 2022 Giants. When the Eagles in 2021 ran into a Super Bowl contender in the playoffs, the first round against Tampa Bay, it clearly looked like they weren't even close. It didn't look like they were. It looked like Alabama versus the Citadel almost, where it just was on another level. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think the Eagles are clearly a superior team. I think they outmatch the Giants at almost every position, but the Giants are very well coached. Their young quarterback is hot right now. They have pieces up front on both sides where it matters most. So I agree it's going to be a close game. I have 30-23. I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles do cover and it's plus 7.5, but I'm going to say the Giants just squeak under there and it's, maybe a late score or something keeps it a little bit closer. But I think the Eagles are going to handle their business and get to the NFC Championship, but it's going to be a really exciting game. Kickoff is Saturday at 8:15. Patricia's got another show for you Friday. So do Gino and I. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. We're in video form. Also, Twitter handles. Let's get them out there. Patricia, where can they follow your stuff on Twitter and on Sports Illustrated as well?
Yeah, I'm at Patricia_Traina, Traina. And you can also follow my written work over on giantscountry.com, which is part of the Fan Nation Network, a Sports Illustrated channel.
And then Gino, you're on Twitter at GC24_football. I'm on there at DiBiase, LOE. Once again, thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants your first listen each and every day. Guys, again, subscribe to Locked On NFL. The Locked On NFL podcast gives you daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, in-depth analysis on the biggest games coming up this weekend, NFL key predictions every Friday, and Monday, local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. You can find Locked On NFL as well, wherever you find Locked On Eagles and Locked On Giants. For Patricia Traina, Gino Cammilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and enjoy the game on Saturday night.